Good morning, everybody. This is your man, Bobby Hesley, taking you through a morning walk and talk about a very serious topic. Why am I covering the topic that I'm covering today? Why am I talking about communism? That sounds like something that's kind of old, right? That sounds like something that's back from, the 20th century or even the 19th century. Why all this talk of communism? I mean, we're Americans, right? We're in the year 2020. Why are we dredging up this old, seemingly anxious concept of communism? This is stuff people used to freak out about and be paranoid about back in the 1950s when they would set up anti-communism committees and there would be anti-communism Senate hearings. Well, I want to tell you folks that communism is alive and well. It's never gone anywhere. It's just changed its clothes. It's just changed the color of its feathers. But underneath it all, it's still there. And when I woke up this morning, I actually wasn't planning on doing a walk and talk today. But when I woke up this morning, I felt God speaking to me. I felt the Holy Spirit really strongly inspiring me to share with you guys the dangers of communism and how it's knocking at our door. How it is literally one election away from completely taking over our country. So let me get right into it. What is communism? Why should we be afraid of it? Why should we do everything we can to turn out on November 3rd to vote against it? To make sure that it doesn't solidify its way into our country? Well, first let's start off by what communism is. I want to start off, guys, by asking you a question. And the question is this: if you look all throughout history, who is the most bloody, brutal dictator pretty much ever known to man that we've ever seen? In other words, who has killed more people? What is the most evil ruler in history? Now, most of you, your mind is automatically going to go to the H word. Think about it. Whenever somebody asks you who's the worst ruler, who's the worst dictator in history, the first thing that comes up is Hitler. That's what everybody thinks about first, right? Hitler. And don't get me wrong, Hitler was a very, very evil man. One of the most evil people in history. But the fact of the matter is this, guys. I'm going to shock you. I'm going to surprise you a little bit, which Bobby Hesley's kind of known for doing. I think outside the box. I teach outside the box, and I want you guys to as well. Adolf Hitler, and this is not a defense of Hitler, so please keep your words out my mouth, but Adolf Hitler is not the bloodiest dictator in the history of the world. The way that you measure how deadly a dictator is not necessarily by how evil they are. And Hitler was very evil. If you go back and watch his speeches, if you read Mein Kampf, he was a very, very evil man. Extremely evil. I can't state how evil Hitler was. But if you measure up the body count, the pure body count, Hitler's not the most evil dictator in the world. Do you guys know who the most evil dictator in the world was? I'll give you a clue. It's not Hitler. It's Mao Zedong, Chairman Mao. The Chinese ruler is the most evil dictator in the world when you pack up the body count. Now, how many people did Mao kill? 60 million people. In a period of 3 years, Mao killed 45 million of his own people in a manufactured famine. It was a socialist experiment called the Great Leap Forward. The Great Leap Forward. When you guys get a chance, I want you to do some research and I want you to look up Great Leap Forward Mao, M-A-O. And in a span of just 3 years, Mao killed 45 million of his own Chinese people. He went on to kill another 15 million of his own people through various massacres, through various crackdowns, through various military roundups of his own people who rebelled against his socialist plans. So Mao is the most evil dictator. Number 2 to Mao, a close second, is Joseph Stalin, who killed 40 million people. Okay? He killed 40 million. Now Hitler is all the way down there at about 12 million people. We know for a fact that he killed 6 million Jews during the Holocaust. And when you add up all of his other military invasions, all of his other atrocities that he committed against different nations, most historians would say that Hitler is somewhere between 10 to 12 million people. So there we see that Hitler is number 3. So when you measure the pure body count of how evil a dictator is, it's Mao all day. Now, how was Mao able to kill so many people so quickly? I'll tell you exactly how. It was through communism. Now, what is the difference between communism and something like Nazism, for example? Fascism, it's called, more properly. I want you guys to think about something. Fascism is a very bad ideology because fascism is an ideology of superiority, okay? So, for example, when you look at Nazi fascism, the Aryan nation that we had to basically defeat in World War II, that waged war on the entire world, twice, by the way, but more so specifically in World War II, the Nazis believed that they were superior. And what they believed is the only way to truly be the superior race is to be the most numerous race, which means we have to get rid of all the other inferior races. We have to kill them off. And this is why Hitler rounded up all the Jews in Europe. He wanted to chase them out of Europe and basically kill them all, so that they could be the only superior race, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed Aryan nation that would rule the world. That's what fascism is. So I want you to think about this, guys. Fascism, Nazism, and other similar ideologies to it are focused outwards, okay? Fascism is focused on killing everybody else, right? That's what the fascists want to do. They believe that they're superior, so because of that, they want to kill everybody else except themselves, because they believe that they're the superior race and they should be the only ones on the planet. They literally want to rule the world, literally. And that's what explains World War II. Now, how does that differ from communism? I'll tell you exactly how. Communism, on the other hand, rather than looking outward to kill everybody else, communism is focused inwards. In other words, communism is turned in on its own people. It's turned in on murdering its own people rather than murdering everyone else. Okay? So that's what Mao did. He killed 45 million, 60 million of his own Chinese people. Joseph Stalin killed 40 million people. He was a communist. Many of them were Russians. The Soviet communists killed many of those people. So why do we always hear about Hitler being the worst? Well, think about it. The Germans lost the war, right? Who won the war? Believe it or not, the Chinese communists and the Soviet communists, they were on the winning side. World War II was not to go against them. The Soviets were fighting against the Germans. The Soviet communists were fighting against the German fascists. And the Chinese communists were fighting against the Japanese imperialists. Well, there's an old saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So because we had enemies in common with the Chinese communists and with the Soviet communists, that's why we, in a very soft way, had a bit of an alliance with them in World War II. More so to snuff out our common enemy, not because they were friends of ours. Because you got to remember, our enemies were also the Soviets and the Nazis and the Japanese. Or I'm sorry, yeah, the Japanese and the Nazis. The Japanese bombed us with Pearl Harbor, so that's why I went to war against them. So because the Germans lost the war, they go down as the worst. Hitler lost the war, so he's the fall guy. When in actuality, Stalin and Mao killed way more people than Hitler did, but they were on the winning side. And one of the spoils of war is when you're on the winning side of war, one of the spoils of war, one of the rewards of war is that you get to rewrite history. You get to whitewash your own atrocities right out of the history books. You get to spin a revisionist version of your own history. So that's why we always think of Hitler when we think of the worst guy. Because that's another part of his defeat, is also going down as the worst in the world, when in actuality there were people much worse than Hitler. So, how does all of that lead to communism? Well, first we have to understand what communism is. Communism is a godless, secular ideology that seeks to put man in the place of God. It's an atheistic ideology at its core. At the core of communism is hatred and rejection of God and of all things divine. And at the core of communism is an idolatrous worship of all things secular, worldly, earthly, and human. And it seeks to supplant God with those things. So what are the three main attributes of God? What are the three main attributes of the divine nature? That God is all-seeing, that God is all-powerful, and that God is ever-present. He's present everywhere. Omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresent. Those are the three main features of the divine nature. Communism seeks to replace each of those with a secular humanistic reign, R-E-I-G-N. So in other words, rather than God being all-powerful, communism seeks to make man, and when I say man, I mean government, secular government. It seeks to make secular government all-powerful. Rather than God being all-seeing, rather than God being all-knowing, it seeks to make secular government all-knowing by taking away all of our privacy rights, by invading every aspect of our lives and knowing everything that we do. Everything. Even down to how the temperature that we keep in our homes. And it also seeks to be omnipresent. It also seeks to be present in every area of our lives, to literally micromanage and nanny state babysit every aspect of our lives, like wearing masks, for example, in a way that is far, far beyond what's necessary to deal with a global pandemic. That's just one example off the top of my head. And folks, that's what communism is. Communism basically says, I am running for president, and I want to take away all of your fundamental human rights. I want to take away your right to free speech. I want to take away your voting rights. I want to take away your rights to marry and raise a family. I want to take away your gun rights. I want to take away your religious liberty. I want to take away your right to earn a just and living wage. I want to take away your right to start and run a business however you see fit, provided the business is, as long as the business is legal, ethical, and doesn't hurt anybody. I want to take that right away too. Vote for me on November 3rd. I approve this message. Think about it, guys. If a communist truly ran on what they stand for and who they really are, only extremely mentally ill people that are on the fringes would vote for those people. There's no way that a communist can run on who they actually are at their core. So what they do is, rather than telling the truth and being transparent about who they truly are and what they truly stand for and what they truly plan on doing, if they get the power from you that they are seeking through your votes, they come at it with a different angle through identity politics. That's what they do. They commit identity politics, and the only way for them to successfully get elected is for them to successfully create an us versus them mentality. So what do I mean by an us versus them mentality? Well, they do what's called communist equality movements. You see, at the core of every person, all of us want to live in a just, equal, and civilized society. Who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want equality for everybody? We all want that. It's a God-given urge. It's a God-given right. It's a God-given desire. So the fact is, communism deceptively tugs on the heartstrings of the masses when it comes to our desire for equality, right? They hide behind equality movements. They hijack equality movements and they hide behind them. And the way they create an us versus them mentality is through identity politics, right? They pit the rich versus the poor. Read the writings of Karl Marx. Read the Communist Manifesto. It's all about that. It's basically a book filled with dichotomies of us and them distinctions, us versus them distinctions. And the spirit of Karl Marx lives on through the thoughts and through the works of many people that have come after him that are communist. It's all about the rich versus the poor, the capitalists versus the laborers, the bourgeoisie versus the proletariats, which is what Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels called it in the Communist Manifesto. The black versus the white, the gays versus the straight, the men versus the women, the cops versus the civilians, the natives versus the immigrants. All of these us versus them identity politic issues, communist hijacks. And what they do is, if they can get enough people at each other's throats, if they can create enough division, what will end up happening, guys, is they will be able to get the people to suicidally kill their own nation by calling for unity problem solvers. And what's the problem solver for disunity in all the countries that thought that it was the answer? Socialism, right? Socialism is envy in policy. It's basically codified envy, legalized, legislated class warfare envy. But it's not just class warfare. Communism seeks to create race warfare, race wars, gender wars, class wars, sexual orientation wars, police versus civilian wars, immigration wars, all these other wars, all these us versus them wars. That's what communism seeks to do. So the answer, the supposed answer, is socialism. Let's just tax the rich. Let's chop the most powerful of society down, down a peg, so that we can make everybody equal by bringing the top down to the bottom, rather than putting policies in place that bring the bottom to the top, or that give people at the bottom the opportunity and the freedom to practice upward mobility, to make their way up to the top through their own hard work and through their own effort. Socialism is a very necessary stepping stone for communism, because you can't just all out come in with communism. You have to make a gradual ascent to it through different milestones, and socialism is that milestone. We're already seeing it in our country, folks. We're already seeing this notion of socialism that's pushed by the Democrats. Now, the reason I'm really concerned about this is because we have somebody running for president, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that are all out communists. You think I'm being a conspiracy theorist? I want you to think about something. Think of these two groups that have taken over America since the death of George Floyd. They've used the death of George Floyd, the tragic and preventable death of George Floyd. And I believe that George Floyd's death could have been prevented by both sides. It could have been prevented by Mr. Floyd had he not taken lethal doses of fentanyl and methamphetamine and cocaine, and not used, counterfeit money to buy cigarettes or whatever it was he was buying. He had a hand in his own death. But it also could have been prevented by the Minneapolis Police Department. Just because a chokehold is legal doesn't mean that you should use it, right? Not all things that are legal are moral or ethical. So there's fault on both sides there. But what happened is there were two Marxist organizations that were waiting in the wings during a presidential year, during an election year, to exploit a tragedy, to be able to work itself and insinuate itself into a tragedy so that it can tear this country apart, to create an us versus them environment, to pave the way for socialism, which paves the way for communism. So who are these two groups? Black Lives Matter and Antifa, both of which are professed socialists, both of which are professed Marxists. Patrisse Cullors, one of the three co-founders of Black Lives Matter, is on tape, we've all seen it, saying that we are trained Marxists. Guys, Marxism is just another name for communism. It really is. And if you think about it, we'll pick on Black Lives Matter for a second. Anybody who knows Bobby Hesley knows that I spare no words when it comes to Black Lives Matter. And I don't believe you should support the organization or the hashtag. You guys got to realize, once you truly discover who Black Lives Matter is and you know what they're all about, you should not be promoting that hashtag Black Lives Matter. You know why? Because you are giving free search engine optimization and free marketing to a Marxist organization. Every time you use that hashtag Black Lives Matter, you're one of those people who say, oh, it's not about the movement, it's about the saying. I don't support the organization, but I do support the saying. No, you're supporting the organization when you support the saying. You know why? Because prior to 2012, prior to the death of Trayvon Martin, nobody was saying Black Lives Matter. Nobody was using that phrase. It all started with these three feminist women, these three black feminist women who started Black Lives Matter. It all started in 2012. So you are supporting both when you do that. But the fact is, Black Lives Matter is a Marxist organization, and so is Antifa. And both of these organizations have basically gone through all the major cities in our country, Democrat cities, Seattle, Portland, New York, San Francisco, Kenosha, Wisconsin, Minneapolis. They have gone through these cities and they have looted, shooted, burned, raped, pillaged, and created anarchy because they wanted the opportunity to pave the way for socialism, to pave the way for an us versus them mentality. And if you think I'm being a conspiracy theorist, I would encourage you right now to just pull up Antifa.com. Go to Antifa.com, Antifa.com, and just see where it leads to. It's going to blow you away. If you go to Antifa.com right now, it takes you straight to the campaign website of Joe Biden. God is my witness. If you don't believe me, do it. You're not going to believe it, but you got to see it in order to believe it. So that's what's happening, folks. We have communism waiting at the door of our country, and it's looking to take over. The policies of Senator Joe Biden, of Vice President Joe Biden, the practices of career persecutor Kamala Harris has everything in place for them to completely destroy this country with their communistic ideology within their first term, because it's also going to be a Harris administration as well. So the fact is, guys, you have to educate yourself about communism. And if you want to go deeper down this rabbit hole, I encourage you to go to my YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and just pull up Bobby Hesley. My name is the same across all my social media platforms. And one of the earlier videos I did, you'll have to scroll down to find it, is called Does Black Lives Matter Hate Your God and Country? And it's an in-depth video. It's about a 45-minute video, but there's video clips, there's graphics, there's illustrations. It's a very scholarly presentation about the evils of communism and about the origins and the roots of communism and everything that the Catholic Church has done for the last 150, 200 years to combat communism. It was the first and loudest voice speaking out against communism. And I even quote from various papal encyclicals, from Pope Pius IX, Pope Leo XIII, Pope Pius XI, John Paul II, and all their strong words that harshly condemned communism. So it's very important that you vote policies instead of personalities, because that's what communists have to run on. They have to run on the cult of personality. They have to run on style rather than running on substance. I mean, what was the main positive thing everybody had to say about Barack Obama when he ran back in 2008? They didn't say anything about what he stood for. The only reason most people voted for Obama was because he was black and because he was a smooth talker. That was the only thing I can get out of people. Why are you voting for this guy? When I would ask my black friends, when I would ask other people, why are you voting for this guy? Why are you so enthusiastic? Because he's black, man. Same with white people. Oh, because he's black. He's a good talker. And the fact is, Obama was not a good talker. He's a good reader. As long as he's got a teleprompter in front of him, he's a good reader. He's great at reading teleprompters. But if you take that teleprompter away from him, he's one of the worst speakers you'll ever see. And I know this because I'm a trained public speaker. And he uses lots of filler, groans and uhs and ah and when he's not reading something. So anyway, guys, when you vote on November 3rd, your country's hanging in the balance. There are evil people who want to change, who want to fundamentally change the United States of America. They want to take it communist. But they have to have a stepping stone in order to do it first. They have to successfully pass socialist legislation, which is high government regulation of businesses, confiscatory levels of taxes. Those are going to punish everybody, folks. Not just the rich. It's going to punish you. Because the bottom line is, guys, and I'm not being cruel when I say this, but poor and homeless people, they don't provide jobs. Have you ever gotten a paycheck from a guy standing on the corner of 11 Mile and John R. holding up his I'm hungry sign, I need food sign? Have you ever got a steady paycheck from a guy like him? I'm not knocking him. But the fact is, the poor don't provide jobs. They don't. We love the poor. We have to care for the poor. But they're not job creators. It's the rich that provide jobs, the evil rich. They're the ones who give you your paycheck. They're the ones who create all the value in society that makes an economy thrive to where everybody can have a shot at the American dream. So anyway, guys, that's it for this video. Kind of early in the morning. I'm still a little bit half awake as I do this. But I want you guys to go to my channel and watch that other video that I did in depth about communism. And just vote against it on November 3rd, guys. Don't vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Trump's not perfect. You may not like his personality. There's lots of things about him you may not like. But at least he's not a godless communist like his opponents are. So thanks for watching, guys. I will see you on the next video. I hope you come to the Eucharistic Procession that we are having this Saturday on October 31st at 11:30 a.m. at Our Lady of the Rosary Catholic Church on I-94 in Woodward. I'm going to be the keynote speaker. We're going to process through the streets of Detroit, with our Eucharistic Lord Jesus Christ. And we're going to make a stop at our Sweetest Heart of Mary. And then we are going to end at St. Joseph Oratory Shrine. And I will be the keynote speaker. And it's going to be a purely spiritual talk. It's going to be an apolitical event. I hope to see you guys there. And I will see you on the next video. God bless.